This is probably my favorite area in Darkmoor, I can't lie. Looks really nice. But in today's video, we're gonna be talking about the rank 10 spells. I've seen a lot of people talk about it, whether it be in my comment section, whether it be in my live streams, or whether even in the Discord, or even the official Wizard101 server. I've seen so much talk regarding these spells, and a lot of people don't like them, and there's some people who do like them. And there's certain ones I do like, which I will, we'll talk about in this video. And we're just gonna be talking about all of them in general, realistically, and give you guys my thoughts and opinions, because I kind of have talked about it on stream, but I haven't really like dedicated time and like actually sat down and be like, hey, this is what I think. So that's the whole premise of this video. So we'll talk about the regular 10 pip spells, and then on top of that, the shad enhanced variation. We're not going to be talking about any other shadow spells in this video. I've already talked about them in separate videos when the teasers came out, so I'm not going to be talking too much around there. But there were some changes, so maybe I'll talk about it in a different video. But let's start off with fire spell, right? The fire spell is called the Chariot, and then if you enhance it, it's called Reverse Chariot. So what their gimmick was this time around with the spells is they wanted to make them do two different hanging effects, which I can see, right? And I know a lot of PvE players were saying that they didn't like it because, hey, it should have been an AoE. Now, I've already kind of memed on this spell. This is just Raging Bull, but what it does 880, and then it puts a 450 hot and then a 440 trap. And then you have the bottom path, which is gambling a trap and then giving you a hot in return. Which is very interesting. I do say so myself. Now, not too much of a fan of this spell just because, and I'm kind of siding with people on this, which is just, hey, why would I waste 10 pips on this when if I just want to do damage, you do Sun Serpent? And that is correct. If you want to do damage, why wouldn't you just use Sun Serpent? Why wouldn't you just use like an AoE and whatnot, or Dragon and stuff like that? Which they both fulfill their own niche. Right, but Chariot's doing its own specific niche, which is, hey, I'm still giving you damage on top of that, but I'm also giving you hanging effects. So you're doing damage to the enemy, and then on top of that, you're getting hanging effects in return. So I'm completely fine with them doing spells like this. It's unique to a certain regard. And this isn't no PR answer. I feel like a lot of people are going to be, oh, you're just siding with them or whatnot. No, like genuinely, that is completely fine because this is just the starting, right? They all gotta start somewhere. So I can imagine spells in the future being even like better and better and better. And it's not like they can't go back to these spells in like in the near future and slightly adjust them in certain regard. Like imagine later down the line we got spells that are like, or maybe 6 or 7 pip spells, or maybe like a school pip is involved and whatnot, and it's giving you 2 separate hanging effects. Like I think that's completely fine and justified to its own regard, because we can't just keep having the same spells that are just like, hey, 500 damage, that's it. Like, it's cool having some cards that just strictly are, giving you multiple hanging effects. But it would be nice just to see, I know a lot of people want, is just a straight damage card that is 10 pips, which I'm completely on it with you guys. Technically, they could have made a path A, or like an additional path where it's just strictly damage. Forget the hanging effects, just do strictly damage. And honestly, I'm all for that, which I think a lot of PvE players wanted. And that would, honestly, this would, in that case, would overtake Sun Serpent in that regard to a certain extent, because it would be single target while Sun Serpent does a hit into an AoE. But imagine just a straight Chariot doing straight damage, which I think people would want. But my honest take is it's unique, don't get me wrong, but will I be ever using it? I don't think so at the moment. Genuinely, I don't think so at the moment, just because it's 10 pips. Like, it's just really not my case. But the spell that I will give flowers to is the shad variation, which is Reverse Chariot, which at max tier is doing 545, and then putting 2 hots on yourself that are 1240. Just remember that, 1240. This is 2 pips, by the way, and a shad pip, which I know, hey, people, well, let's not take the shad pip stuff into this conversation. There's probably be a separate video on the whole shad changes, but I know some players in PvE were complaining about that. But just by default, what this is doing for 2 pips, doing that much damage and giving that big of a heal, and then on top of that, yeah, the pact is, hey, it removes a trap off the enemy 1 per round, which, I mean, hey, for what it's doing, I can understand. But the fact is, this is still kind of strong for that heal. Yeah, I mean, someone can counter it pretty easily. That's like with everything, though. But what you're getting out of it is very strong, and I prefer the shad variation than the actual one. I'm kind of glad they didn't do 10 pip in a shad, because, dude, that would be... I don't even want to think about that, but I'm kind of glad that they went the 2 pip route. What I feel like they should have done is added path A and path B for these. I don't like how it's just a straight up linear spellament. I've been a lot of, I honestly like, I'm now in that point in the game where I like having options. Before, back in the day, I feel like it was always just this or nothing else. Now I'm kind of like, hey, can we have an option for this and that? Like, I kind of prefer that, but reverse chariot's good. Chariot, not so much. Also, I will put it in here. We're gonna talk about animation as well. It's just Raging Bull. It's just if Raging Bull's cousin exists, and that's basically what the Chariot is like. Raging Bull animation just looks so much more better than Chariot, in my opinion. It's definitely unique, but the Chariot, like Raging Bull, is just better animation wise. And then we move on to the Ice spell, which honestly, I think it's probably like one of my favorite animation wise. This, as well as the Mid spell, top 2 best animation spells from Darkmoor, I will say. But what Hierophant's doing is, which is also a boss. Spoilers. I mean, what'd you expect? But yeah, Hierophant's also a boss, so it's kind of cool just having her as a spell too. But top path is doing 800 damage, chromatic shield, so whoever you're fighting, let's say you're fighting ice, it's going to put an ice shield. If you're going to fight a balance, it's going to put a universal shield, but it's going to be like toned down a bit, so it might be like 55 or 50, I don't know exactly. It depends on what the card's doing, I guess. And then it puts a 40% trap on the enemy. And then path B, which I'm not too much of a fan of, is doing 750 ice damage, and then it's clearing 8 blades on the enemy, and then it's putting a minus 60% chromatic shield on self. So if you're fighting an ice, for example, let's just say it will put a 80 or minus 60% ice shield per blade that you cleared. So very interesting in that regard. But the thing is, I'm not like, it's interesting, but the thing is the Aquila spells already exist, which are kind of already doing something like that. I don't think I have the ice spell on me for Aquila, but it's kind of doing that, in my opinion, for, you know, its own separate thing, which not too much of a fan of. But at least the animation's pretty cool, I will give it that. The animation's pretty cool, just not a fan of what it's doing. But the final boss actually has access to this spell, the ice head of the dragon, or whatever you want to call it, right? Has this spell in its deck. So if it hits you, like your Storm Wizard, your hitter, or whatnot, you're just gonna get countered by this minus 60% chromatic shield. And it does still a solid amount of damage, especially if it's given to bosses. So just be wary about that. Now, the one I do like is the Shad Enhance variation, which is doing, 445 ice damage, which is completely fine. But then it puts 2 chromatic shields on yourself, and then it clears enemy blades. So you can use this, do some damage to even just like a break a shield, get rid of some weaknesses or whatnot, then be on the defensive and semi be on the offensive by getting rid of the enemy's blades. So this is kind of unique. I'm all for it, and I like it. Right, I'm not too much of a fan, as I said, with the base spell. Really wish that we had something different, but the reverse spell of this, it's literally creme de la creme. I like this. I genuinely like this. And of course, like I said, with the animation, very good animation wise. Now let's move on to Storm. Storm, I don't like the animation of this. I seen some people like the animation and whatnot. It's just Storm Mockenspiel. Like, if you guys don't know what Mockenspiel looks like, look up the balance spell that's called Mockenspiel. It just gives me that vibes. It went from a clock tower to a tower. So there's that. And then path A, it's doing 1200 damage, as well as it's giving you a blade, and it puts a weakness on the enemy. And then you have path B, which is doing 1210 as well, and then it removes hots on the enemy. In return, it gives you a plus 40 blade per clear on the hot. Now, I've seen some people bring up, well, why not just use King Art? King Art gives you a hot for a hot. I think they're both doing their own separate things, which I think people have to realize. This is giving you a hot for clearing a hot, while this, on the other hand, it's clearing a hot for a blade. So they'll both have their own different things. So it really depends on what you're fighting and whatnot. But for PvE heads and even some advanced combat heads, Storm Owl exists. Now, I don't want to bring too much attention to it, because if you're like, hey, well, why would I use this spell when Storm Owl exists? Then you know what's going to happen. they're gonna go back to this spell and be like, okay, we should probably nerf the damage on this, or even ban this from advanced combat, which I don't think they should. I think this is such a really good spell, and even if they do, then people are just gonna go back to like start using the tower. But then there's like certain advanced combat modes that are below 170, so then it becomes a thing of like, what are storms going to hit with now, because Path A of King Art's banned. So if Storm Owl ever gets banned, it's gonna be a sad day. I'm just hoping that it's not. I guess people are just gonna start using base Scion or something like that. I don't even know. Or no, probably people are probably just gonna go back to like using a base Oni or something like that. I don't know, something like that if that ever happens, right? But yeah, they're both doing their own separate things. One's, King Art's doing hots to hots, while Tower's doing hots to blades. I just don't know when I'm using this currently. And I know some people will bring up the idea of, well, you can use this in the final dungeon and to clear hots and stuff like that. And that is correct to a certain extent. But the one thing is if you do this and you cast it in that fight, chances are you will be taking backlash, or not, I wouldn't call it backlash. You are going to be taking a fat chunk of your HP gone, because how that fight works is if you blade or trap, you lose 20% of your max HP. So, depending on your situation in that fight, you could accidentally kill your whole team just by using the tower. No, I mean, you're getting rid of the hots, don't get me wrong, but you also will be giving yourself a blade in return. So the tower does fit one fight niche currently. Not too much of a fan of, like I said, it is filling a certain category, don't get me wrong. It's doing a blade and a weakness. I kind of just wish it was a blade and a hot, personally. But, I mean, what can you do? Or blade and hot, or what they could have done was it does damage and then gives you hot and then it puts a weakness on the target. I feel like that would be good. Do some damage, and then on the top of that, slow down the enemy by putting a weakness on them, and then also heal yourself up while you're doing it. That would have been nice. But maybe that would be a little bit too OP. And then we do have the reverse tower, which I do like as well. What it's doing is 690 storm damage, and then it gives you 1 chromatic blade, and then on top of that, it is clearing a hot on the enemy per round. So this one, like I said, is still good. It is 2 pips, just like the other ones. And for 2 pips and a shad, you're doing 690. Just to put that in perspective, is if, for example, we pull up Bats. Bats is at max tier is doing 320. Now, if, we do have the exact same pip cost, include a shad, and now you get a blade and you're doing 690 storm damage. And you're clearing hots off the enemy. But if you do not fulfill this, just remember, you will be taking backlash, as I stated in my video. So definitely be paying attention to that. Still though, I am a fan of the reverse tower versus the regular tower. Animation wise, not too much. Now we move on to the Emperor, and the Emperor spell I'm actually going to be using 100%. And I'm going to be training this spell on my Storm and my Fire. Now, the reason why I'm going to be is this Path B. But let's talk about Path A first, which is doing 775 mid damage, and then it puts a 240 bomb on the enemy that lasts 3 rounds, and then it puts a chromatic trap. So if I am on a Storm, this will put a Storm trap on the enemy. Now, the Path B is what got me really excited, which is it's a 1050 3 bombs that last 6 rounds. And not only that, if the enemy has shields, you can clear 8 shields and put 35 traps on the enemy that are based upon your own school. Now, you might be wondering, well, if you want this on a Storm, wouldn't this put Storm traps? Yeah, but you could just use this to clear the shields and put a bomb, have someone else detonate the bomb, and have a Storm use these traps. It is a really good spell. Now, I know people can be like, well, doesn't Basilisk exist? Well, Basilisk was changed to a dot spell this update. So instead of it being bombs how it once was, now people are just going to have to switch to the Emperor. But this does affect lower advanced combat fights. So anything that's below 170, people are using Basilisk to get rid of shields and to like set up bombs and then detonate the bombs. Can't really do that because what was changed with Basilisk. So this is kind of the new Basilisk for advanced combat players, for the people who were doing certain strategies. But this will only be good in 170 advanced combat modes and higher moving forward. So there is that. But like I said, this is a really good spell. And then we do have the fusion variation, or the shad enhanced variation, which is very good as well, which is doing 2 pips, 480 mid damage, and then puts 245% chromatic traps on the enemy. So if you're using this on a storm, for example, it's going to put 2 storm traps that are plus 45%, and then it clears shields off the enemy, so 1 per round. So reverse emperor and regular path B emperor are probably like my favorite out of all these, just because of what it's doing. I know it might not intrigue all players, but the fact is you can use, for example, like Krampus on this. You can use Apocalypse to detonate some of these. Like, it's a very good spell. And if you're using this in, let's just say, casual PvE, you can use this to get rid of the shields and then just incendiate the bombs if you wanted to. That's also an option as well. But I still think Path B Emperor and Reverse Emperor are really good spells. Path A Emperor, not so much, I'm not a fan of. And the animation on this is crazy. I like this. This and the Ice Spell, very good. Now let's move on to the world, which I've seen so many people bring up JoJo references for this. But what Path A is doing, which I feel like, why does this exist? But it's doing 720 life damage, which you're probably like, okay. And then it puts a bomb on the enemy and you're like, all right. But then it just randomly gives you a stabilize. Like, huh? So it's giving you a minus 25% incoming aura for 4 rounds. So life got its own hit and brace, which is interesting. And then you do have Path B, which is doing 625 life damage, and then on top of that's clearing up to 4 dots, and then it's putting bombs on the enemy. Now Path A is why? Just why? Like, even if you think this isn't going to do enough damage, you can just use this to get the brace out of this. So this is questionable to me, that's for sure. Path B, it's kind of whatever to me at the moment. Still have a reason to use this at the moment. But Path A, why? That's all I really have to say about that. Animation wise of the world, it looks interesting, but it's not something that I like. I've seen so many people say that they like it, and some people say it's very interesting. They like the eyes and whatnot. I'm kind of one of the few that just isn't a fan of the animation. I'm really a fan of the animation of Ice and Myth, but if I had to put like a third option up there, it would probably be between Life and Balance, animation wise. But yeah, this Path A of the world, why is he giving a stabilize? That's what's confusing me. I mean, I guess if Storm is gonna have negative char or negative auras, I guess give life positive auras. Yeah, I mean, Toiret kind of already has that with devotion, so I mean, fair, honestly fair. And then the path, not the path B, the reverse world is doing 430, and then it puts 210 bomb, and then it clears dots on itself, which this one is a specific niche. It really depends on what's going on. Not much of a fan of this one. I think out of, you know, both of these spells, I think top path the world is confusing the most. That's the fact that it's giving a stabilize. But the path B and the reverse world, not for me personally. So let's move on to the death spell, which has stirred up a lot of controversy, because the fact is of the animation. Now, the animation of mortality is you have the vampire kind of like suck the energy of the opponent into its staff, and so many people are questioning is where's the drain? Where is the drain? Yeah, this spell is not a drain. It is not. This is a Headless Horseman, but from a different year, basically, the animation at least. And what is doing Path A is doing 825 death damage, proceeds to give you a blade, and puts a universal shield, so basically a tower shield on self. And then you have Path B, which is doing 770, and then it clears up to 4 hots on the enemy, and then you get a shield in return. Now, this is making its own specific niche because Anubis exists, which clears hots and then instead puts an attenuate on the opponent. That's plus 30%, and it lasts 2 rounds per clear. So if it's, you know, 3 clears, you're putting a 6-round attenuate on them, which can be easily replaced by just bracing or whatnot. While this is just putting shields on yourself. So it depends on what pathway you want to go. Technically, they both fulfill their own specific things, but I think the death spell, for what it's doing, I think it's good. But I know some PvE heads really didn't like how this was tailored towards advanced combat, which I will have to agree, it technically is tailored towards advanced combat, because this path A and B are good for that, like for advanced combat strategies. But for you PvE heads, there's not really a good straight up death hit unless you're using which I don't have spell elements for on this character, which is Avenging Fossil Path B. So people were kind of hoping this to be like an X amount of drain, or some people were saying like they just wanted it to be a drain and something like that. And I can kind of understand the animation kind of leads towards that, and I honestly thought the same thing when I saw that. I was like, wait, where's the drain effect? I guess we're not the drain, but instead it's just a straight damage hit. I know Headless Horseman boss does have access to this, but I don't know what triggers the mortality cheat. I have no clue. But we'll have to see about that. But beyond that, I think it's good for advanced combat. PvE hits kind of got shafted a little bit, I will have to say, regarding that. And I agree with you guys. I generally agree with you guys. Same thing with the advanced combat variation, or not the advanced combat variation, the shad variation of reverse mortality, which is doing 465 death damage, then puts 2 tower shields on yourself, basically, that are 45%. And then you also clear hots, which this one's good too. Like, are you going to use this while you're questing? No. No, why would you ever use this during questing? Are you going to use this in advanced combat? Yeah, I can definitely see someone using this 100%, but you're just not going to be using it for like your questing purposes and whatnot. So I think that's what kind of people were kind of disappointed about, and as well as the animation, just because it's a wannabe headless. It's literally just a wannabe headless. But the Headless Horseman is like the prime, and then you have mortality. Right. The startup on it was good. I felt like something was gonna happen, but he just kind of just like points his staff at you, and that's really it as the animation. I really was hoping for something like crazy to happen, but it's okay. That was a funny random occurrence. Just saw Blaze Life Hammer mid recording session. Anywho, let's move on to the last spell, which is Balance. Now, Balance, we have Wheel of Fortune, which was teased animation-wise to us on a Cat Live, I believe. But I noticed that they cut off the animation, and I was like, okay, surely there's like a specific hanging effect or anything like that. They cut it off, and you can hear in the back that they were saying like, oh, that's funny how we cut off the spell, which just literally told me that there was going to be a hanging effect or something like that on the spell. But hey, now what it does is it puts well, it does 745 balance damage, and then puts a bomb on the enemy, and then a weakness. And then you have Path B, which is gambiting negative charms for bombs. Now, I haven't seen anyone appreciate this spell, and I kind of agree. Animation looks really cool. I just wish it wasn't so fast. I wish that they slow down the animation or something like that and let it build up a bit before just simply going outright so quick. But when it comes to a regular spell, I mean, balance is always tough to put like certain stuff on, and I can understand from like a certain dev perspective of like, okay, well, balance is all things, so what do we do? Which prime example is just like Spectral Blast was doing stuff like this, or even Chameleon Clash when it does question mark damage. Theoretically, they could have done the same exact thing on this spell because it has the cards, so you could make an argument of this could have been question mark damage, or even the Path B could have been question mark damage. That could have been an option, but will I ever use Wheel of Fortune? Probably not. It just kind of sucks. It honestly kind of sucks. I wish it did. I don't know what I would want it to do. I feel like a lot of people just wanted like strictly just damage 10 pips, and that is it. Like just that is it. Just give us a straight damage 10 pip hit. Because I think the only other spell Balance has access to is technically Sabretooth, but it gives a hanging effect. So people just wanted a strict damage Wheel of Fortune that just does damage, no additional hanging effects, whatnot. So then that can be their new 10 pip boss killer when you're soloing on a Balance. It could have been 10 pips, done damage, and then did question mark damage. And then just Balances can just buff themselves up with universal buffs and just use a Wheel of Fortune. That could have been it. And then if you want to be a little bit defensive, what you can just use is, of course, the Azteca spell. That could have been an option, like use your Sabretooth. But kind of a missed opportunity with that, and it could have been something better. But sucks for such a good animation on that spell. And then you do have Path B, which I'm not a fan of either. Or not Path B, sorry. The Shad Enhanced variation, Reverse Fortune, which is... It is just Ninja Pigs. Or, not, well, Balanced Ninja Pigs. That is basically what this is, with the pact of having negative charms on the enemy. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I feel like the Balance one kind of was, in my opinion, probably the worst one. I think out of all the spells, I genuinely think that it had such, it's literally probably like my third favorite animation of the update. But I kind of feel bad for the bounce players because of what it does, and not many people are really going to be using it. Maybe, you know, maybe someone's going to make the argument for the path A, or yeah, someone can probably make the argument for the path A because it puts a bomb and it puts a weakness. But even setting up the conditional for example, Scion is very bad. But those are my takes on the new Darkmoor spells. You guys let me know your thoughts and opinions down below. Like, do you guys like any of the animations? Or you kind of feel like they had a missed opportunity on some of the spells? No, definitely I agree with you guys to a certain extent. And I know the main old topic was these should have been AoEs. Now, my only concern is I know a lot of people want these to be AoEs or should have been AoEs, right? But the thing is, I kind of understand you guys, but at the same time, I kind of don't. Now, the reason why I'm saying that is because people want these to be AoEs, but realistically, are you going to ever use them? I feel like even if they were 10 pip AoEs, I feel like the argument would have been, hey, can you guys make them like 5 pips in a school pip or something like that? Or make them 6 pips in a school pip? I think that's probably what people wanted instead, which they could do next year. They can make spells that are stronger than the 7 pip AoEs that we already have. Make a spell that's just straight up better than Stormlord. They could definitely do that and make it a school pip variation spell. They can just simply do 5 pips in a school pip, maybe something like that, and give players access to that for every school. I think that's kind of what people want, I guess, from what I'm hearing from the comment sections and stuff like that. But they wouldn't just give us like 10 pip AoEs like that. I mean, hey, we do have like certain schools do have AoEs in that regard, but just giving everyone an AoE, we just had Wallaroo like not too long ago, like 2 years ago. So I feel like next year it's more likely to happen, but I feel like this year was kind of their like, hey, let's do this instead, which I think is fine. They can definitely do it for next year, and I'm looking forward to it if they do that. I think what they should genuinely just do is 5 pips and a school pip, make it an AoE that's strictly just an AoE, no extra effects or anything like that. Just simply that, and I think players would be happy. But I don't think they should just make all these 10 pip AoEs, because even if they were, I know 90% of people still wouldn't use them, even if they were AoEs, because people be like, oh, well, I'm just going to like frenzy into my 7 pip. I think that's just what the general people are going to be saying. So there's that. But that is it for me. Leave a like, subscribe, all type of stuff, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace out, guys.